Okay, last point. What happens at the group level? I'm going to skip just a little bit. And what happens at the group level? So now here concluding, I'm interested in instances in discourse. This can be face-to-face discourse, but in my data, it's public discourse of some sort, where punctuation is not just interpreted in a pragmatic manner. So what do you mean when you use the period? But punctuation is also assigned to particular social groups. So you have social meaning creating by exactly the procedure that Agha, Agha, the anthropologist, calls enregisterment. So certain practices of punctuation are enregistered with certain social groups. It's like saying that certain practices of punctuation are deemed typical or stereotypical for particular social groups. So one instance of that is, this is an excerpt from a German video report. They report on that US study I showed you in the beginning. And what comes across in this report, so this is the headline in German translated by me, that's why you should never terminate a WhatsApp message on a full stop. And so in this report, the omission of full stops is connected in the discourse with the made up category of the WhatsApp pro, the professional user. That's the idea. And so the report goes, you have the video report, and they have sequences of staple images of young women, especially writing on their smartphones. And it goes in German, als WhatsApp-Profi lassen Sie den Punkt weg. WhatsApp-Profis setzen auf Emojis und kurze Sätze. So you have a sort of social modeling in this report, where it's not about what the point means, it's about the typical users or non-users of the periods. And so the text speaks of the WhatsApp expert or the WhatsApp pro, and that's the enregister moment there. So the omission is characteristic for the experienced users. And what the image does is to foreground gender. So the image conveys the idea that it's young women. It's not older men, it's not older women, it's not younger men, it's especially younger women. So you see in that footage both men and women, but you see many more such images, female hands typing in, or females sitting or lying or holding a phone and communicating than males. So this is a little moment of enregisterment, and I'm not saying that this is generally shared in the German speech community, but the interest is in these moments of discourse where punctuation practices are connected, are interlinked with social groups. Here's another one. Here's another example. Here, this is something that was circulating on Twitter, and it says, wir sind nicht hier bei Facebook. It presents itself as a correction on a student essay. So the teacher corrects the student essay by making reference to that other social space. So again, you have a moment of enregisterment. It's not about enthusiasm, it's about what is deemed appropriate for certain spaces of writing as opposed to other spaces of writing. Then you have, here's another one. I'll read out the translation. This is again by this quality newspaper, talking about the signs, the punctuation signs of the never understood ones, and talking about the exclamation marks. In the early days, the exclamation mark was rare in public, and the stroke with the sign has become, so the idea is the exclamation mark was there in diaries by teenagers. So that is the meaning conveyed here. And now it has become the sign of the never understood ones, those who have the feeling of not being heard and pump up the volume. It's precisely for this reason that the exclamation mark has made an astonishing career. It spread from diaries to comment sections. And the point is here, the exclamation mark is typical for those who express rage and hate and astonishment and stuff like that. So the repetition of exclamation marks is being politicized in this interpretation. It doesn't just convey evaluation or enthusiasm, but it is the weapon of those who want to make themselves heard, to repeat the exclamation marks. We're going to stick with that for the next few slides, and then we terminate. This is an example that fits onto that. It was a sort of alert by Facebook 2 years ago, how to recognize fake news in German. And here it says, read the headlines critically. Yeah? Fake news often have headlines in capital letters and with exclamation marks. So you have another idea. So the exclamation mark is something that is associated with a particular genre, which has a political context, fake news. So real news do not use exclamation marks. I'm not sure about that. If you look at Boulevard, cheap newspapers, VAP news, maybe you can find exclamation marks in the headline there. But anyway, and so the final one would be the association. Do you know this here in this country? That's the last example, the 1111. So the idea behind that, this is a sort of second order parody or second order stylization. This is the sort of combination, exclamation, 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 11, and this reads 11. Or this reads 1, or this reads 11. The idea is that the mock is on those who use a lot of exclamation marks in order to convey rage, and in so doing, they forget to press the shift button, the key, and so they have the alternation between the exclamation mark and the one, and the joke is pronounced by writing this out, which is unrealistic, of course, right? So you find a lot. What I show you here are queries on the internet. So people ask Google, what is this actually? And so there are other people who answer. So the answer is always, so this is a way that non-extremists make fun of the extremists and of the apparent or supposed usage of the extremists. Okay, so this is a very interesting enregisterment of punctuation, where it is not the exclamation mark itself, it's a particular usage, it's a particular practice that gains political, it's associated with a very specific social group, those who spread rage on the internet. And of course you need a lot of cultural knowledge to understand this. It's cultural, it's not structural. I'll show you 2 examples to complete from my screenshot selection to see how that works, because this kind of Google questions is meta-pragmatic. So people have seen this somewhere and they're not sure what it means. So how do people use that? Here you have, this is one of these Facebook groups. It's called the Best of Social Media, and they forward something. And this here says, I have to stay up so damn early because my job was still not taken up by some foreigner. So it mocks on the idea that foreigners come in and take our jobs. And this here has become very proverbial in Germany. It says, thanks Merkel. Merkel is a chancellor. So the idea is, so the sarcasm against the chancellor, Angela Merkel, who has allowed all the refugees in, and it terminates on exclamation mark 1, exclamation mark. So it's the pattern that contextualizes irony. It makes clear that this is not meant seriously, because at the face of it, it's absurd, but it could have been mentioned irony. It could have been mentioned seriously. So it's that little thing here that contextualizes irony, that makes the double voicing at this situation obvious. Here's another one. This is even more, this is perhaps a third order stylization or something like that. So what happened recently, and this is the last example, I conclude, but it seems you're interested, especially in this little stuff. Okay, so what's happened in Germany recently is that the extreme right party I was talking about on Monday, the AfD, the right-wing populists, opened up a platform on the internet for students, pupils, to report teachers who are critical towards that political party in class. It's something that we read about in Brazil a couple of days ago, so that now there seems to be this idea of political control over critical thinking and critical discussions in classrooms. So this AfD party in Hamburg especially, they opened up this platform saying, so write here what this particular teacher does. And so the main idea is here, what happened is that people started sabotaging this. So there's a lot of sabotage and people go on the platform and write a lot of funny and absurd things. So this one here and this, group page reports on the sabotage, reports on the sabotage. And this one here reads, okay, that's a mock email. And here it says, why must my son in the school always sit to the left? So they want to denounce leftist teachers. And so the key word is left, of course. So my son must teach on the left, question mark, exclamation mark, 1, okay? So this is again the sign that, so the parody. So it's a parody, not at the face of it, but contextualized through punctuation signs. Okay, so to conclude, I think this is obvious. I mean, we can't just say that this is rebellion, and I think it's not very useful to look at punctuation in terms of deviance and to say, okay, so here's the norm, and I count the punctuation in terms of what conforms to the norm and what doesn't. So I'm interested in developing this approach to punctuation. This is what we try to do in Hamburg, which is not implicitly normative. So we don't count deviations, we don't count omissions. I mean, we look at omissions in terms of what they do and what they don't, but we don't count omissions as deviations. And we try to be attentive to interaction now, and not just the use or non-use, but to interaction. And so the deployment of punctuation as a resource for interaction, so that's something that people take up and read and use to coordinate their next turn. So these are ideas from conversation analysis, basically, that come into here. And that also, I hope I can show that these pragmatics and the social meaning of punctuation plays out at different scales. So it can play out at the individual level and at the level of group stereotypes and enregisterment, basically. So how people use punctuation to index or to mock or to make fun out of other social groups. And I think that such an approach could be useful for emojis as well. I mean, there is a lot of exciting research about emojis and a lot of different approaches. But I think what I would like to see more and maybe do in my own research is to look at emojis in a more conversational way. So how are emojis taken up and how are the moods that emojis communicate important in contextualizing the next turn? It's always about the next turn, and how these signs indicate what could come next. Okay, so I did overstretch the time, but that was it. And thanks for sticking along.